Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting it raw.
It means capturing moments. It means unexpected things that sort of tickle your fancy as you're out and about in the world. It means, documenting important events. It means creating art. Yeah, it's storytelling.
Nice. Kay Ross, thank you for joining me on the podcast. Here we are.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're going to learn all about you. So right now we both live in Hong Kong. I am in Sai Where in Hong Kong do you live again?
Central, near the mid-levels escalator.
Okay, got it. So thank you for taking the time. I really appreciate it. And ready to just jump in and look at your first image?
Sure, let's do it.
Okay, and okay, again, the mechanics are I don't look at the images until we talk about them, and then I kind of go, okay. So I have to describe it. It's a logo, and there are three sort of stage lights set up in the sort of the foreground above. And then the field on the background is one yellow talking bubble. It says yes, ... And then there's another speech bubble, and it says and. Both the words are in capital letters. So it's like yes, and. So I would say this has something to do with improv. What is this? What is this image? Kay.
You're right. It's definitely to do with improv. I perform improv, have done for at least 15 years. And I know you're interested in improv. It's a form of theatre where a team of players together create scenes on the spot with no preparation, no script, usually based on random, unpredictable suggestions from the audience. And it can often be funny, but it doesn't necessarily have to be funny. It's about storytelling and relationships between characters and situations. And I've been performing improv for about 15 years. I perform with an English language team here in Hong Kong, although unfortunately we didn't get to perform much during COVID. And the yes and message in the image is the number one principle of improv that improvisers, performers around the world know and learn probably in their first lesson of improv. It's the main principle that guides improv performers, enables us to do what we do together as a team without a script. And what it means is we approach what we do together and how we interact with each other with a yes and mindset. Mm-hmm. And that means whatever our scene partner says or does, or whatever happens in the room, or maybe someone laughs or we hear a police siren out in the street, whatever happens, our job, our invitation is to yes and. It's a verb, to yes and. And that doesn't necessarily mean we agree or like what the person says or what happened. It means we're at least willing to open our minds and be open to accepting that it's the reality of what's happening in front of our nose, and accepting that another person has the right to express their opinion, to offer an idea, and that we're curious to listen.
Yes. So now it makes me very self-conscious about actually the podcast format. Very much is a kind of yes and experience. It's because I don't know what's going to happen, and then you give this to me, whatever the image is, and I'm like, okay, and it's really funny because some people have mentioned that I don't really ask questions. What I do is I hear what the person says, and then I start talking, and then the person
Yeah.
says, "I think there's a question there," and then they yes and me right back. Really?
Because the and part of the equation is then I respond. So it's like a ping pong match back and
Yep.
forth. You make an offer, I respond. I make an offer, you respond. And, you know, we don't have a script in real life. We don't have a
Hmm.
script for this podcast. So we're improvising in every moment. I don't know what the next sentence out of my mouth is going to be.
Yeah, I know. That's what the sort of the jeopardy and the hazard and the fun of it, really.
Fun and the exploration, the,
Right.
the delight of it, really.
Okay, Kay, I have to ask though. I mean, like in Hong Kong, like this is the scene big? Like, how do you keep busy in this? Like, how, like what is this? What is the community like?
It's not my full-time job. And the scene in Hong Kong is quite small. There are a few teams around
Yeah,
that perform, some more regularly than others. Some do things online,
yeah,
which my team doesn't do. And there's a small audience for it in Hong Kong.
yeah.
It's not very well known, but we're building it.
So roughly, how many? When you say a team, like how many people in your group at the moment?
At the moment, there's about maybe 5 or 6. We're in the process of training up some potential new members.
Right, right. And so what attracted you to improv? I mean, for me it was when I early university going and just like splitting gut because it was so funny. But then so what about you? What was the attraction?
Well, I've always been an actor since a teenager. Since I was a teenager, I was in a youth theatre group in Adelaide, in Australia, where I grew up. I was in a youth theatre group for about 4 or 5 years. And so I had a little bit of exposure to improvisation with that because we devised our own plays with direction from professional actors. And then I studied a year of drama at Adelaide University in my first year at university, and I had some exposure to improv there. And then I performed in scripted theatre for a long time as a hobby in Adelaide and here in Hong Kong as well. And then I started performing stand-up comedy, which is very carefully scripted and rehearsed.
Sure.
And while I was doing that, I saw a team performing and eventually started going to their shows and then was invited to join their practice sessions and then joined that team. And I decided very quickly that I like improv a lot better than stand-up because I don't have to memorize a script. And it's a team sport.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, but it's interesting to call it a sport. Okay. So walk us into this world of improv of yeah, just like, so how many times do you guys get together?
At the moment, once a week
Nice.
on a Monday evening.
Okay.
And yes, it's a sport. Like, if you play soccer or football or whatever brand of sport, you practice. There's rules
Right.
of the game.
Yep.
But on the day of the match, you don't know what's going to happen. You have to adapt in the moment to what's happening. They're improvising.
Yep.
So improv, yeah, you could call it a sport because it's playful, it's fun. It involves a team cooperating with each other with a goal.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
sport, yeah.
So how, the question of chance and the question of happy accidents and strange tangents, I would imagine that in improv, in a way, the more outrageous and different and off the wall it is, sometimes the more entertaining it can be and surprising. So how much of improv is mental flexibility?
A lot, yes. And it doesn't have to be off the wall crazy stuff. It can be very real, authentic truth between two characters that we create in the moment. So I remember listening once to an interview with Robin Williams, and the interviewer asked him, "Oh, how do you do that? You must have a really quick mind." And he said, no, it's not about that. Or I'm paraphrasing him, but it was something like, it's about letting go of that logical voice in the back of your head that's saying, no, they won't like that, not good enough, all the judgmental stuff in the back of your head, the back of your mind, and trusting your impulse, your instincts, your
Right.
maybe a sensation that's happening somewhere in your body that inspires you to walk a certain way or say a certain thing. Trusting your gut instinct, and so it doesn't have to be funny.
Yeah. Okay. Like the podcast format, in a way, like being on stage, I don't know what's going to happen. And I had no idea that on this Monday afternoon, we would go in this direction. And now I am totally fascinated. Okay.
And there are other principles, I guess we could call not rules, but principles of improv. But yes, and is certainly the first one.
Oh, for sure.
But there's other things like one that I really like is make your teammates look good.
Of course.
Make
Yes.
teammates look good. So it's not me being the star of the show and getting all the laughs and hogging the stage to tell funny jokes. It's about we support each other.
Yep.
Again, because we don't have a script, we don't know what's going to happen. So we support each other. If someone does something unexpected or makes what we think is a mistake, we have to go with
Yep.
the new reality that they've
You have
created.
to. Yeah.
And or if someone, their brain goes blank and they've got deer in the headlight, center stage,
you have to help them out.
jump in and rescue them and support them and make them look good. Yeah, and what I like about that is that while I'm doing that for my teammates, they're doing the same for me.
Absolutely. So name a time when you had a performance or you had a moment on stage that transcended in a way, where it's like everything gelled and all of a sudden you kind of looked at each other and you said like, where did that come from? And oh my God.
Well,
Every day.
it's hard to pinpoint a particular one because when you're with players that you've played with before, you kind of develop a mind reading ability.
Yep.
You get to know them. And so there's been so many moments like that.
Oh, wow.
I really can't pick a particular one.
Okay. I'll
But
make it easier.
It is magic when it happens. Yeah.
Okay, what about the flip side where it just bombed? Maybe you could remember that one where it was just like, oh, fuck.
I was performing at an improv festival. I think it was in Manila in the Philippines.
Wow.
And we were like in the Wild West riding horses, and my teammate said something and I just froze. And and then the scene ended. So, yeah. And that happened. That does happen.
Oh, for sure.
And our job is to support each other. Yeah.
Okay. Now that we're talking about it and we're here in this moment, yes, and let's move on to the next photo.
I was going to suggest that we do a little experiment, a little game very quick little game of playing yes and. Are you up for that?
Sure.
So the way it works is, let's say we're good friends, we've known each other for a long time, well, and we have known each other for a long time, and we're planning our next holiday. We're discussing where we should go on our next holiday. And so I will make a suggestion, and your job is to respond. So we're going to go back and forth, and after I make the initial suggestion, every line will start with the phrase enthusiastic, yes, and. So, yes, and.
Okay.
And then you add something to what I say.
Okay.
So if I
Sure.
say, Ran, we should go on holiday to Japan.
Yeah. Yes, and let's also go check out what happened in Fukushima.
Yes, and I remember what happened last time we went to Fukushima.
Yes, and that's when we were trying to eat shark fin soup, and there's a massive explosion.
Yes, and you saved me. It was close to certain death, and you saved me.
Yeah, and but then I got really nasty, and I just chucked you back into the ocean because I wanted to see if you knew how to swim.
Yes. And I was rather annoyed about that.
Yes, and luckily I paid for all the therapy you needed.
Yes, and that's what convinced me to divorce you.
Oh, yes. Yeah, it's true. And I'm keeping all the money.
Okay,
Yeah, got it.
thank you. And what that does is it gets your mind out of that groove. Oftentimes, the rut that people have of saying yes, but that'll never work because
Right, right. And it's kind of like an exquisite corpse, in terms of the like poetic writing, right?
yes, yes,
Okay, well, I'm going to say yes, and let's look at the next image.
yes. Let's.
Oh, okay. So this is a photograph probably taken on the 19th floor because it looks rather high, or 20th floor somewhere. There are two groups. First of all, you're standing and you're overseeing, I guess you're facilitating two groups speaking to each other. Each group has about two, four, six, about 8 to 10 people in them. You're in an office room or in a sort of I guess maybe it's like a corporate kitchen or sort of a large space, bunch of people, bunch of desks. They seem to know each other, but maybe not because they have name tags. So maybe these are people who are invited into this space. And yeah, it's daytime. Yeah. So what is this?
This is a workshop that I facilitated
Mm-hmm.
for Hong Kong's main English language newspaper.
Oh,
Yes. And the HR manager invited me to facilitate a workshop for some of their staff on the topic of divergent thinking. So about
okay.
creative thinking, yeah. And
Nice.
so these are all young members of staff, so they knew each other. They were wearing name tags for my benefit,
Right.
but they knew each other. And so there were two groups, and they were doing an exercise called Word at a Time Story,
Okay.
which is an exercise that requires several different kinds of skills that improvisers use on stage. But it's about taking those principles and mindset off stage into life and business and applying the principles and mindset of improv off stage in life and business. It's not about teaching people to perform improv, it's about approaching life and work with an improv mindset. And
Okay.
that training methodology is called applied improvisation. So these people were doing an applied improvisation workshop to build their divergent thinking, creative thinking capacity.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were doing a fun exercise called Word at a Time Story, which means they go around the circle to tell a never before told story.
Right.
And each person says one word and it goes around the circle. And of course, that means it's totally unpredictable because we
Sure.
don't know where the story is going to go. And so it builds people's skills in listening because they have to listen very carefully. And they can't be planning too far ahead because by the time it's their turn again, the story might have gone a completely different direction that you didn't expect.
Sure.
And yeah, it's a really fun exercise. And then the important thing with an applied improvisation workshop is that then there's a debriefing of, well, okay, what happened? What did you notice?
Right.
What did you learn from that? And I remember one time doing that exercise with a different group of people, a different client, where one participant said afterwards that he really, really hated that exercise because the story didn't go the way he wanted.
That is so telling.
Yeah, it was. I thought very, very telling. Yeah, like I wondered what would he be like to work with.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, good point. What kind of company? What kind of person is he? Like, is he an accountant?
I don't know.
It's that's somebody who really needs a lot of structure.
Yes, yeah. So with the workshop that was in this photograph that you're looking at, I led them through maybe half a dozen different improvisational exercises where they got to practice they had an actual experience, not just a theoretical lecture, an actual experience of applying the principles and mindset
Right.
of improvisation. And because companies and organizations need people with the skills of teamwork, leadership, communication, creativity, emotional intelligence, handling change and the unexpected, being comfortable with stepping into the unknown. All of those skills are what companies and organizations need.
Do you feel that Hong Kong, there's a real hunger, demand, market, all those words for it? Like that people here are at least switched on enough to know, well, I think we need this. And then they come and reach out to you?
There is certainly some there's, I believe, and people like me, applied improvisation facilitators around the world, are convinced that there's a need for it. And organizations like the World Economic Forum and Harvard have done studies and interviewed CEOs around the world and found that those are the skills that CEOs say their companies need. In Hong Kong, it's been a bit of a hard sell because I talk to, say, HR managers, for example, and they might be a bit risk averse
Sure.
to hire someone for using a methodology that they're not familiar with.
Right.
Uh,
And I think that what it is I think Hong Kong, or it's not necessarily Hong Kong, but there are a lot of companies where the mentality is very, like, I find it, the way I describe it is very literal. You know what I mean? Like it's all extremely like literal. It has to be this very prescriptive. You use the word risk averse, right? So not risky, not brave.
Going by the rule book.
So then you spend so much time trying to convert people's thinking to kind of at least understanding that you're not some alien coming up with these strange ideas.
Yeah. Well, what I often do in situations like that is, rather than trying to convince them with facts, I invite them to play the yes and game, or the word at a time story game, or some other improvisational process, where they actually get to experience it, and then notice their own behaviour and notice, well, okay, how might that apply or be useful in the work situation?
No, it is fascinating. So how long have you been doing this? Really? I mean, like,
I've been doing the applied improvisation work for about 12 years.
oh wow, respect.
And there's a big community of people around the world who do it, not just for corporate clients, but in education, from kindergarten to university and beyond, in healthcare, doctors and nurses in the emergency room, or the surgery, in theatre, in conflict resolution, in coaching, sports coaching and life coaching.
I would imagine that in negotiation, it would be a very big thing.
Yeah.
So, okay, so let's talk about the role or the importance of, I think I made a reference to it earlier just because it seems to beg to be asked, is this idea of mental agility or mental flexibility, or being able to not be stubbornly stuck on this one kind of idea, right? So how do you understand breaking that down?
Well, we all had to be agile when COVID arrived.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
We've all had to pivot and be agile and adapt and find new ways of doing things, new ways of being. So we all do it every day. Some more willingly than others, but every day. I don't know what's going to happen.
Okay. Well, so now, because it's a big hot topic, what about this notion of how artificial intelligence is, just because this has definitely had a direct impact on my ability to earn a living.
Yeah,
so,
me too.
Okay, talk about that.
Because another thing I do is I'm an editor. I write and edit English language marketing content, and a lot of companies. I've read lots of articles in the past few months about writers and editors losing their jobs
Yep.
or, their income, like freelancers like me, because clients think, I can get it done by ChatGPT for $5.
Yeah.
Yeah. But a lot of content I've seen by ChatGPT is, in my opinion, dreadful.
That's just, the word that wanted to come out of your face was not
Yes.
dreadful. It was a
No.
lot more vulgar.
Well, there would be an adjective before the word dreadful.
Fucking dreadful.
Fucking
No, it's
dreadful.
been no, for sure. So because we're in the same world. Yeah. What you realize, what it does is, in a way, is going back to this notion of it's functionally all there, or it's like on the surface level. Okay, yeah, it's there, but what's missing is that hazard, or that the human element, or what's missing is that improvisational, whatever you want to call it, right? It's like it's missing the
human.
Okay, sure. So, but in terms of, you're in a room with people who they have to tick boxes and create outcomes, and have deliverables or whatever. Like
And they have a budget.
We have a budget, and like these people in this room, right? And so, how do you convey to them that actually that weird little mental thing of skipping between topics or between directions to go in an opposite or strange direction, a creative leap, is itself very human and very useful? Like, how do you explain that to people?
You can see the expression on my face.
Yeah.
It's challenging. What helps is to have a champion in the company who has somehow had some exposure. Are you talking about the GPT or the applied improvisation?
Like all my questions, I don't know. I just put the words out there, and then I say, you take it from there.
Well, in both situations, I guess it helps to have a champion within the company who already believes in what I'm doing, what I'm offering. It doesn't necessarily have to be the CEO, but it helps if it's a senior person who's willing to take a chance on it, to experiment.
Yep.
Maybe because what they've tried so far isn't working. But with ChatGPT, that feels like it's very new. So I think a lot of people, like freelancers or any writers around the world, are still figuring out how to handle it.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'm going to yes and you to go to the next photo.
Yes.
Okay, so I don't know if that's your hand holding up a card. On the card, it says, what would be possible for me if... ... I told myself more empowering stories about myself and the world. I like it. Take it away.
Thank you. Yes. Well, that's a photograph of one card from a card deck that I created called The Playground of Possibilities.
I like it.
And it was actually taken, it's a real life photograph taken outdoors with some greenery in the background. And it's not my hand, it's the hand of my friend who was taking the photograph.
Okay.
While his hand was holding the card deck. And it's not photoshopped, it's a real photo.
Okay.
And it's one of 52 cards in my card deck. And every question starts with the phrase for people to ask themselves, or for one person to ask themselves. And every question starts with, what would be possible for me if I did something? So it's about their own thinking and behaviour, not their mother or the government or their boss.
Yeah.
And I'm fascinated by psychology and why people think and behave the way they do. I think that's why I got into the field of marketing. And I'm also passionate about personal development and healing. So I like the idea of helping people to choose more useful thoughts and beliefs and stories about themselves and the world. Because, I mean, do you ever have any shitty, critical, unkind, unhelpful thoughts or beliefs or stories about yourself?
Okay. I don't think you know this about me, and I think you're going to love how this. I didn't know this was going to come up, but in 2004, my wife and I went to learn how to surf, and we were in Sri Lanka learning how to surf, and then the tsunami happened, and then she almost died, and I almost died, and at one point, we were separated, and I was pulled out into the sea, and I made it onto a boat, waiting to be rescued. While in the meantime, on shore, people were dying. It was very harrowing. And before this point, like before this happened, I had sort of come to this, I've been taught, right? I learned about this idea of the stories we tell ourselves frame our relationship to things. And so this idea, like in your card, I told myself more empowering stories about myself and the world. Like what would happen if I did that? So I totally appreciate this notion because that's exactly what I did on that boat when I was separated during the tsunami. Was I knew that if I told myself a disempowering story or something, that would frame my relationship to it, certainly in terms of my memory of the situation. And so, yeah, I completely appreciate that, and I'll let you take it from there.
Thank you. Well, then I'll share mine, which is my most common unhelpful thought that I have about myself that was implanted when I was a very young kid, is the old not good enough story.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. That was, my dad was like that with me and my siblings and our mum. And that has coloured my life for a long time. So I had this idea of creating a card deck, or even the phrase, the playground of possibilities, popped into my head unannounced in August 2013.
Okay.
And I liked the alliteration of it, the playground of possibilities. And I immediately thought, yes, the universe is constantly offering us opportunities, adventures, challenges. So why is it that we don't accept them?
Okay.
And I thought, well, it's because of our thoughts and beliefs and stories about ourselves and what's possible for us or not.
Yes.
And that's when I had the idea, I want to create a card deck with 52 questions to prompt us to choose more useful thoughts and take inspired action, and improvise new ways of being. So for me, there's a combination of the card deck, the questions, and improvisation, the way we live.
I love it.
Yeah. And so I immediately started taking divine dictation of questions.
Yep.
And ever since then, since August 2013, almost every day, I think of new questions.
Okay.
Depending on, influenced by things that are going on in my life or something I've read or heard. And so after much procrastination and research and more procrastination, I did a crowdfunding campaign and created the card deck.
Nice. I can see you're holding them up for me. So it's like on the cover is like a not childish, but childlike drawing of female form. That's you, sorry, holding up these, it almost looks like pillars, but these cards. And so, it's nicely, so people can order these?
Yeah, this is me on a swing.
Okay. Oh, okay.
In a playground in Byron Bay in Australia.
Okay.
And yes, so there is a website, thank you, called simply playgroundofpossibilities.com.
Great.
People can order it there. And I do workshops. I've done live workshops, not during COVID, of course, unfortunately. I do live workshops using the card deck and my adaptations of some improvisational exercises, games. Yeah, so I love it. And I get lots of really nice comments because people say, like when people shuffle the deck and pick a card for themselves or ask me to pick a card for them, they often say, oh, that's the perfect question for me right now.
So the universe now is going to send something. So why don't you pick one randomly?
Yes, I'm going to shuffle the deck for
Okay,
everyone.
sure.
Okay,
Pick one randomly.
what's the question for everyone right now? Thank you
Yeah,
very much.
just what is the question the universe wants me to hear?
So I'm shuffle, 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 shuffle. Oh, there's one
This
that's
is the
picked.
best.
That's one that's
There you
helping out.
go. Go run with it.
Oh, interesting. What would be possible for me if I let go of my belief that I'm not, insert your own adjective, enough?
No way. Really? That's so good.
Yes.
I let go of my belief that I'm not, insert adjective, enough.
Not smart enough, not pretty enough, not rich enough, not old enough, not young enough, not talented enough, not something enough.
Nice. So as a consultant who goes into companies and talks to people, I'm going to talk about me for a second. I usually go in there and I say, look, I'm going to say we're going to do a lot of things. We're going to have a lot of conversations. You're going to hear a lot of new ideas. And ultimately, if I can give you one insight in this room could easily change your life, right? So what's amazing about your card deck is that it's like you have these insights that could literally change a person's life, right?
Yes, definitely.
Very powerful.
Yeah, yeah. And so then the invitation is to, ponder the question and then take action on it.
Okay.
So it's not just about thinking nice, warm, rainbows and unicorns, positive thoughts. It's take some action in the world.
Okay. So how do you facilitate people moving from the card? So in the seminar that you give, you have this wealth of cards, right? So how do you integrate them in your workshop?
I use them in various ways, and I invite the participants themselves to choose a card. Choose cards in different exercises and discuss it with a partner. So like in pairs, for example.
Nice.
And so there's many ways to use them.
Yeah, I'm sure there are.
And then when they take one home, they can use it once a day or once a week, as often as they want, 10 times a day if they want.
Right.
They can use it about a specific situation in their life, a big decision they have to make maybe, or it could be about a long-standing habit that they know is not helpful for them, not useful for them. I prefer to say useful rather than positive or negative.
Sure.
Or they can just say, okay, they can just trust the universe and say, okay, what's the question for me right now?
Right. Oh, that's so good. So as you're saying this, I have this card in front of my face. I told myself more empowering stories about myself and the world. Like what would happen, what would be possible for me if I did that? Okay.
So if someone had a belief about the world of like life's a bitch and then you die, well, that would influence how they behave, how they be in the world, wouldn't it?
For sure. So okay, so is there a take home that a listener, because the podcast is all about helping people make every second count, right? Really kind of get into this idea of we could live on autopilot or we can actually be into action, right? So when you're in a room and you're like, okay, here's this conversation of creating some kind of change, how do you help or how do you talk about moving into action?
I invite them to think about, okay, what can I do? Once they've read the question, they're thinking about, well, okay, how does that apply to me? Then I think automatically the brain starts coming up with solutions or actions or ideas like, okay, how does this apply? What am I going to do differently? What new behavior am I going to do? I think when you look at questions like these, you can't help but start thinking, well, okay, what am I going to do about this?
Right.
So I don't have to force them, and I'm not going to be going home with them to police what they do. It's up to them. It's their responsibility to do something about it if they want to. Yeah.
So in the large Rolodex, to use an old metaphor, of experience of previous clients, when was there a time when you really kind of had a positive impact on somebody and they came back to you and said, Kay, you know what we did totally did something crazy. So does something stand out?
Yeah, one of the stories I like best is one gentleman bought a deck. He hasn't done the workshop, but he bought a deck at some event that I went to. And like a couple of years later, at least, he sent me an email saying that he and his family were on holiday in India. He was an Indian gentleman but lives here in Hong Kong. And he was on holiday with his wife and 8-year-old son on a very long train trip in India. And the 8-year-old son has autism.
Oh,
And
okay.
so the father got the deck of cards out from his bag. He took it with him on the train trip because he thought, maybe it would help them pass the time. And the father and the son went through the deck one question at a time.
Okay.
And the kid absolutely loved it.
Wow.
So the father and son had a lovely conversation about the card deck and about mindset and about behavior. And I thought that was amazing that an 8-year-old kid with autism got a lot of benefit from it. And the relationship between father and son was so close. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yes, and next photo.
Yes.
So in this photograph, it's okay. So it's you on stage or on, yeah, there's a screen. Okay. So half the photo on the left is a screen, and on the screen is projected a photo of a little girl in a little white dress stepping in the grasses she's probably about 2 or 3 years old, big, nice corona of hair, walking through bushes, and it's a black and white shot. So it's mostly just light and shadow. And and then there's you standing next to it on stage. Your hand is on your hip, your elbow's kind of sticking out. One hand's to your mouth. You've got your wire rim glasses on. You're you're in the middle of saying something, which you have a very expressive face, so you're probably saying something. Yeah. So what is this? Kay, hit me.
This is my TEDx talk.
Nice.
TEDx Hong Kong Polytechnic University, March 2018. I was invited to give a TEDx talk. I didn't even have to audition. The organisers just contacted me and invited me to be a speaker, which was great. And the theme of the whole day was unscripted.
Oh, wicked.
So, yes, perfect. So the other speakers most of them spoke about some challenging or tragic or traumatic thing that happened in their life, like being caught in the tsunami, for example, would be something that, yeah. And the idea was, what did you do to make lemonade? Take lemons and turn them into lemonade. Yeah.
Sure.
And I thought, well, since the theme is unscripted, I have to talk about improvisation.
Right.
And the playground of possibilities. So my theme was life is an improvisation game and a playground of possibilities. They're like the two mantras that guide my life. And so I was giving my talk, and I had up on the screen, you could only see the one of that's me as a toddler when I was about 3.5 years old, I think, just not long after my family migrated to Adelaide in Australia from Scotland, where I was born. Yeah. And so that's me striding boldly through some tall grass, and I think I'm holding in my hand a bunch of weeds, basically, that I picked up. And I just love that photograph of me because it just captures my adventurousness about life.
Sure.
Yeah. And so it was a fabulous experience doing a TEDx talk, and I got standing ovation, and people loved it, and got really nice comments from people afterwards.
That's great. So in terms of, it's interesting how life unfolded for you to, so how did you get to Hong Kong that it evolved into you being invited to be such a speaker and all this stuff? Take us down that road.
Well, I guess it's another demonstration of my adventurousness. I saw an opportunity. I had an opportunity in September 1993.
Ooh, wow.
September 93, I moved to Hong Kong from Adelaide.
93, okay, respect.
Before the handover.
Wow.
Yeah. And I didn't have a job to come to.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't come as the trailing wife of a corporate executive,
Mm-hmm.
but I did have a British passport because I was born in Scotland.
Okay.
So that meant before the handover, I had the right to live and work in Hong Kong. So I thought, well, I didn't have a grand plan.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought, well, I'll go to Hong Kong for a while and see what happens. And if I don't like it, I'll go somewhere else.
Nice.
And 29 and a half years later, I'm still here.
It's an interesting, it's fascinating. Because so one of the things about my previous work life, was I wrote a book, or we really sat and looked at what makes Hong Kong unique. Why is, for example, we articulated it in terms of New York, London, Hong Kong as the three sort of cities of having certain things in common. And then also in terms of the resilience and how it's adaptive and all these different things. So from what you've seen and in terms of your experience, and certainly the past 5 years in terms of Hong Kong, have seen a lot of change. What perspective do you have?
I love the energy of Hong Kong, but as you say, in the past 5 years, it's been very challenging.
Yep.
There have been lots of changes that are difficult.
You've been forced to improvise. We've all had to been forced to really kind of go, okay,
Yes.
how do we create a life? What is life now? Yeah.
Hong Kong is still great, and I love that I get to meet people here from all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
I just love the buzz and the energy of Hong Kong.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So in terms of being able to go and encourage people to have this sort of improvisational mindset, is it opening up? Because I'd say that having been out of Hong Kong for about a year ago, I moved back to Canada, and then I'd say that Hong Kong now is where Canada and the US was maybe a year ago in terms of its opening up in response to the pandemic. So how do you feel about how things are happening?
Yeah, it definitely feels like it is opening up, that all the restrictions are easing.
Sure.
So, yeah, there's always still opportunities.
Mm-hmm. And so it is are the improv evenings still, when the restrictions were around, you couldn't do very many shows, but now would you say that it's picking back up?
Yes, my team is doing a show on June 28.
Okay.
We're doing a joint show with another team.
Okay.
And so they'll do one half and we'll do one half. But yeah, during COVID, we couldn't perform because the government had so many regulations about live performances.
Are there really strong rivalries between improv teams?
No, not rivalries.
We hate those.
No, because improv is all about collaboration and cooperation. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's the largest stage you've been on in Hong Kong? I'd imagine it would be not very big, probably just small bars.
We don't usually perform in a theatre. We need just any kind of room, really. So the show on the 28th is going to be in a basement bar near Lan Kwai Fong.
Nice.
Yeah.
And when's your book coming out?
Good question. Well, I've been told I should write, and I have an idea. I want to write a book about marketing.
Okay.
And the title is going to be "Marketing Doesn't Have to Be Sleazy."
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't written a book about improv, but I like to compile lists of resources about improv and applied improvisation. So I've, over the past at least 10 years, I've got a book list that's like 40 pages long. Like there's so many books about improv and applied improvisation. So.
Okay, so going back to your cards, somebody wants to get the cards. What's the name of the cards again?
The Playground of Possibilities.
So that's it, playgroundofpossibilities.com?
And the website is simply Playground of Possibilities without the word the.
Okay. Playground of Possibilities. So wouldn't a book or wouldn't because I just absolutely love the idea of giving that as a gift to people.
Sure.
It's like, here is, that life is a playground of possibility. So how do you, in a seminar where somebody comes to you and they're giving you a wall, either of negativity or of impossibility, how do you break that down?
The kind of people who come to my workshops tend to be already, at least have a bit of an open mind. They're willing to try things out. Yes, I'm sure there are, a billion people on the planet who aren't interested in this kind of thing. They're not my market. So it's not my responsibility. I can't change them if they don't want to change. So I like to work with people who have an open mind and are curious and excited about exploring possibilities. And I'm also thinking of planning to create a deck more for the corporate market, where the question would be for teams together to discuss what would be possible for us and the company and the organisation. What would be possible for us if we did something?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there something else you want to put our attention on?
Just look at how you approach life. Just experiment with new things and notice your thinking. It's about being mindful about your thinking and just enjoying the adventure.
Nice. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. And I'll definitely promote the cards. I'll promote the cards. Thanks so much.
And in the card deck, there isn't a book in the card deck that explains what each question means, because it's up to each person to decide for themselves what the question means for them. So it's not for me to tell them what the question means.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Nice. Thank you very much, Kay.
Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting